I'm worried the children will be confused. That's how it began. Not with a shout, but with a quiet, calculated sentence that slithered across the table, weaving through the plates of grilled meat and delicate side dishes, and striking straight into the heart of everything we were. The voice belonged to Mrs. Kim, Min-Jun's mother. She didn't look at me when she said it. Her eyes, dark and unreadable as polished stones, were fixed on her son, my fiancé, as if I were merely a spectator to this discussion about my own future, my own hypothetical children. The air in the private dining room, which had moments before been filled with the gentle hum of polite conversation, suddenly felt thick and heavy, like I was trying to breathe underwater. Confused, she repeated, letting the word hang there, a poison cloud in the perfumed air. A mixed child, they will have no true home, not fully Korean, not fully African. She paused, and for the first time her gaze flickered to me, not with malice but with a chilling, clinical pity. They will spend their whole lives wondering where they belong. Is that a fair burden to place on a child? My name is Jendayi. It means give thanks. And for 2 years I had done little else. I gave thanks for the bizarre, beautiful accident that brought a Kenyan architect and a Korean consultant together in a Nairobi coffee shop. He was lost, clutching a map and looking endearingly overwhelmed by the city's chaos. I offered directions. That single act of kindness became a conversation, which became a coffee, which became the great, unexpected love of my life. Min-Jun was my opposite in all the best ways. Where I was loud, he was quiet. Where I was impulsive, he was deliberate. He called me his African son, and I called him my calm Korean sea. Our love felt like a perfect, symbiotic ecosystem. We built a beautiful, private world in Kenya, a bubble where our differences were a source of delight, not conflict. He tried ugali with his hands, laughing as the sticky dough defeated him. I struggled heroically with chopsticks, eventually mastering the technique only to steal food directly from his plate. We were happy. We were, I believed, unshakable. The decision to move to Seoul was mine. I was the one with the more flexible career, and more than that, I was driven by a powerful desire to understand him. To truly know a person, I believed, you had to walk the ground they walked, breathe the air they breathed. I wanted to see the city that made him so reserved, so beautifully introspective. I envisioned us blending our lives, creating a vibrant new tapestry from our two distinct threads. The reality was a cold shower. Seoul was a symphony of order and efficiency that my Nairobi soul struggled to comprehend. The subway was a silent, rushing river of people who knew exactly where they were going and how to avoid eye contact. The social rules were a complex, unspoken language I had to learn through painful trial and error. The bowing, the specific honorifics for every single person based on age and status, the way you had to receive a gift with both hands, it was exhausting. And then there were the stares, not always hostile but constant, a lingering curiosity on the subway and the grocery store on the street. I was a novelty. A 6-foot-tall Kenyan woman with braids that cascaded down my back, walking beside my impeccably dressed, classic Korean fiancé. We were a living spectacle. I learned to armor myself, to build a wall of indifference, but some days, the cumulative weight of those gazes felt heavier than any physical burden. But the greatest challenge was not the city. It was the fortress known as Mrs. Kim. From our first meeting, she was a puzzle I couldn't solve. She was impeccably polite, her home a museum of minimalist beauty where everything had a precise, designated place. Including, it seemed me, I was the foreign guest to be treated with formal courtesy but never true familiarity. Her smiles were like winter sunlight, technically present but offering no warmth. She would ask questions about Kenya, but they felt like items on a checklist. The weather, the politics, the wildlife. Never about my family's joy, our traditions, the songs we sang at weddings. My culture was an abstract concept to her, a topic for polite conversation, not the vibrant, beating heart of who I was. This dinner was supposed to be different. We were making it official. We had chosen the ring together, a simple, elegant band that symbolized our union. Min-Jun had been nervous but excited. "She will come around," he'd assured me, squeezing my hand. "Once she sees how serious we are, she will understand." I wore a beautiful, traditional Korean hairpin he had given me, a delicate silver piece meant to signify a married woman. It felt like a suit of armor. I had practiced my Korean greetings. I knew which dishes to compliment. I was ready to prove that I could honor his world while still bringing my own into it. For the first hour, it seemed to be working. The food was exquisite. Mr. Kim, a quiet man who seemed to live in his wife's shadow, had asked polite questions about my work. Min-Jun was translating little jokes, his hand resting reassuringly on my knee under the table. I felt a flicker of hope. And then, as the dessert teas were being served, Mrs. Kim laid down her porcelain cup with a definitive click. The small talk died. She looked at Min-Jun, and then she released her sentence into the world. I'm worried the children will be confused. The silence that followed was a physical presence. It pressed in on my eardrums. I could hear the blood rushing in my head. My eyes snapped to Min-Jun. This was the moment. This was the line in the sand. This was when my calm, quiet sea would rise up and become a tsunami in my defense. I saw the change in him instantly. His shoulders, which had been relaxed, stiffened. The gentle smile he'd worn all evening vanished, replaced by a neutral, carefully blank mask. His hand, which had been on my knee, slowly retracted and rested in his own lap. He looked down at the intricate pattern of the wooden table, his jaw so tight I could see the muscle twitching. He said nothing. Not a word of protest, not a gentle, "Mother, that's not true," not a firm, "That is a hurtful thing to say." Just silence. A silence that was more deafening, more violent than any shout. In that endless minute, the entire architecture of our relationship collapsed. Every time he'd subtly suggested I straighten my hair for a company event, "It just looks more professional, Jendayi." Every time he'd asked if I had something a little less bright to wear to a family function. Every time he deflected one of his mother's probing questions instead of answering it, all of it crystallized in that one devastating silence. It wasn't just Korean respect for elders. This was different. This was complicity. This was him. In the moment of our greatest test, choosing the path of least resistance, choosing his mother's comfort over my dignity, over our future. Mrs. Kim finally broke the silence, her voice soft as a razor blade. "You see, Min-Jun, it is a complicated thing. Perhaps you should think more carefully." And still, he said nothing. He just gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. That was the second blow. The nod. It was a betrayal so profound I felt physically ill. I pushed my chair back, the legs screeching against the floor, a jarring, ugly sound in the refined room. "Thank you for the meal," I heard myself say, my voice sounding distant and strange. "I am not feeling well. I need to go." I didn't look at Min-Jun. I couldn't. I gathered my purse and walked out of the room, my back straight, my head held high, the beautiful, worthless hairpin feeling like a brand of shame in my hair. The cab ride home was a blur of neon lights and silent tears. I replayed the scene over and over, each time hoping the ending would change. But it never did. His silence was the tragic finale of our story. Our apartment, which had always felt like a sanctuary, now felt like a beautifully decorated tomb. Every object told a story of a life that was suddenly a lie. The photo of us on a Masai Mara safari, my head resting on his shoulder as we watched a sunset. The expensive Korean whiskey collection next to my hand-carved Kenyan soapstone giraffe. It was all a performance. A temporary experiment that had reached its logical, painful conclusion. I went to our bedroom and pulled out my suitcase. The act of packing was surreal. What do you take when the life you're leaving behind was built on a foundation of sand? I packed my passports, my important documents. I folded my colorful dresses, the ones he sometimes said were too much for Seoul. I took the soapstone giraffe, a piece of my home. I left the Korean hairpin on his pillow. A final, silent message. The most terrifying thought, the one that finally broke me, came as I zipped the suitcase closed. His mother was worried about our children being confused. But as I stood there, alone in the silence of a life I was about to abandon, I realized with horrifying clarity that I was the one who was confused. I had been confused for a long time. I had confused his caution for depth, his conflict for complexity, his fear for love. I had built my entire future on a man who saw me as a problem to be managed, not a partner to be championed. I wrote a note. It was only 3 words. "I'm not confused." I didn't look back as I walked out the door. The click of the lock echoing in the hallway felt like the closing of a book. Our love story was over. It was tragic, it was painful, but it was, I believed, finally and irrevocably finished.
The sound of the door closing was a gunshot in the silence of our home. Our home. It was her home, too. And now it was just a collection of empty spaces and echoing memories. Jendayi believes my silence was agreement. She thinks I am ashamed of her, of the life we could build. She has taken her fire and her light, and she has left me in the cold, stark reality of my own failure. But she doesn't understand the nature of the cage. My silence was not surrender, it was a prison. To understand, you must understand my mother. She is not a villain. She is a product of a system millennia in the making. In Korea, you are not just an individual. You are a link in a chain that stretches back to your ancestors and forward to your descendants. Your bloodline is your legacy. Your family name is your identity. My marriage, in her eyes, is not a romance. It is a merger, a strategic alliance for the continuation of our line. To marry a foreigner, a Ogyukin, especially a black woman from Africa, to her, it is not just a rebellion. It is a dilution. A contamination of that pure, unbroken line. It is her greatest fear realized. And I was raised to assuage my mother's fears. My father was always at work building the financial foundation of our family. My mother built the structural one, the values, the discipline, the face we show to the world. Failure was not an option. Causing embarrassment, T-Toktakaru, was a cardinal sin. We are taught to endure, to absorb, to maintain harmony, H-Wahap, above all else. Confrontation is a destructive, vulgar act. So in that restaurant, when she wielded that word, confused, it wasn't just a comment. It was a test of my loyalty to the family, to the chain. To speak up, to defend Jendayi would have been a public humiliation of my mother. It would have shattered the harmony. In that moment, I was not a man in love. I was a son facing his maker, and I failed the wrong person. After she left, the cage door swung open and I saw the bars for what they were. My life for 30 years had been a series of perfectly executed steps, the right school, the right job, the right manners. I was a successful Korean man, and I was utterly, completely miserable. I confronted my mother. I shouted, I think for the first time in my life, "I love her. How could you do that?" She was unmoved. Love is for children. Min-Jun, marriage is a contract. Do you think her family will understand our ancestral rights? Will they expect a dowry of cows? This is not a movie. This is your life, and you have a duty. Duty, that word is a shackle. I tried to lose myself in work, but the corporate world is just another layer of the same cage, hierarchy, face-saving, relentless pressure. I was empty. I started researching. I searched for Korean Kenyan couples, raising mixed-race children in Korea. I found stories that broke my heart, children bullied, called Hanhyul, struggling with their identity. But I also found stories of incredible strength. Kids who were fluent in 2 languages, who navigated 2 cultures with a wisdom beyond their years. They weren't confused, they were evolved. They were the future. And my mother was clinging to the past. In my despair, I went to her house, to the room where I grew up. I was looking for, I don't know, an old photo of myself, a piece of the boy I was before I learned the weight of duty. And I found something else. A small wooden box hidden at the back of her closet. Inside, tied with a faded ribbon, were letters and a photograph. A photograph of my mother, young, beautiful, smiling, her head resting on the shoulder of a man who was very clearly not Korean. He was American. A soldier, perhaps. The world tilted on its axis. My mother, the guardian of pure bloodlines, had a secret of her own, a love she had to hide or was forced to abandon. Was her prejudice born not of hatred but of her own fear, her own unhealed wound? Was she trying to protect me from a pain she herself had endured? It was in that moment, holding that faded photo, that I understood. This wasn't about Jendayi being Kenyan. This was about my mother's fear of the unknown, the other, the path not taken. And I had been letting her trauma dictate my future. Jendayi was my son. She didn't just brighten my life, she showed me the cracks in the walls of my cage. Her walking away was the consequence of my inaction. I couldn't call her. A phone call was just more words, and my words had proven worthless. I had to show her. I had to step into her world completely and vulnerably as she had for me. I had to prove I could be the bridge, not the barricade. I booked a one-way ticket to Nairobi.
Home, Nairobi smells like earth and rain and possibility. My family didn't ask many questions. My mother just held me and said, "A tree that cannot bend in the wind will break." But I felt broken. I walked the streets of my city, trying to find the woman I was before Seoul. She was there, but she was quieter, her edges softened by grief.
Stepping out of the airport in Nairobi was like stepping onto another planet. The noise, the colors, the vibrant, chaotic energy, it was overwhelming. I had a dress for her parents' house, a gift in my bag, and a heart full of terror. This was my final exam.
When my little sister said a handsome Korean man was at the door, I thought she was joking. I looked out the window, and there he was. Min-Jun, standing on our dusty street, looking more lost than I had ever seen him in Seoul. He was wearing a simple shirt, wrinkled from travel, and he held a package wrapped in Kenyan newspaper.
Her father opened the door, a tall, imposing man with a gaze that felt like it could see straight into my soul. He didn't say hello. He just looked at me and said, "So, you are the one who broke my daughter's heart." And then, to my astonishment, he opened his arms and pulled me into a crushing hug. "Welcome," he grumbled. "Now you will learn."
He didn't try to win me back with grand gestures. He just existed in my world. He helped my mother in the kitchen, getting hopelessly confused by the spices. He played football with the kids in the street, his formal shoes covered in red dust. He tried to learn a few words of my mother's tongue, butchering them horribly, making everyone laugh. He was trying, truly, humbly trying. And with every failed attempt, my anger began to melt.
Jendayi, my silence was not because I agreed with her. It was because I was a coward. I was trapped between my love for you and a lifetime of being told that my duty was to my past, not my future. You were right to leave. It was the only thing that could shock me awake.
And our children, Min-Jun. What happens the next time? What happens when she says something to them?
Then I will look her in the eye and I will say, "Our children are not confused. They are the best of both of us. They have the strength of the Maasai warrior and the resilience of a people who rebuilt a country from ashes. They will be fluent in the language of both their heritages. They will know more, see more, and love more deeply than either of us ever could. And if you cannot see that, then you are choosing to miss out on the most beautiful part of our family story." I should have said it then. I am saying it now. I video called my mother. I didn't do it from a quiet room. I did it from Jendayi's backyard with the sound of her family laughing and singing in the background. I pointed the camera at the sunset, at the children playing, at Jendayi's face, peaceful and happy. I didn't argue, I just showed her. "Iyama," I said, "this is my life, this is my happiness." She was silent for a long time. Then she said, "The weather looks warm there, you should wear sunscreen." It wasn't an apology. It was a crack in the door. It was a start.
He didn't just come to get me back. He came to understand. And in doing so, he built a bridge, not just between us, but between the Korean part of himself and the man he wanted to be. A man who could honor his past without being a prisoner to it. We are building a new world. Min-Jun and I, it's a world with space for kimchi and ugali, for K-pop and benga, for quiet respect and loud laughter.
It's a world where our children won't be forced to choose one identity over another. Our love story isn't a fairy tale. There is no happily ever after where all problems vanish. My mother and I have a long road ahead, but I am no longer silent. I have found my voice. They will be taught to be proud of their beautiful, complex, and powerful heritage. They won't be confused, they will be whole, and so are we. This is our chronicle. It's not just a Korean story or a Kenyan story. It is a story about the courage to build a bridge, even when others try to draw a border. The greatest love isn't the one that is easy. It's the one that is willing to do the hard work of understanding. If you like our story and want to enjoy more interesting stories like these, Remember to subscribe.